welcome everyone to part 2 of the in-depth video tutorial for Inventory Cog. Since we last left, I've created the 2D assets for all of our items, added in another item or two, and put in just the outline for the UI for the first of the interfaces that we're going to do. So let's go ahead and jump in and take a look. On the player, I've added a couple of things. I added 2 cameras here. So the first camera that I've added is pointed directly at the character, and this is going to allow us to put a preview of the character into the inventory. And then I've also added a preview camera. Now this is specifically for the item preview. Okay, so when you select an item, it'll place that preview item that we created when we were creating the items into this preview container, which will then be seen. And I went through most of these items and updated their layers as well. So if we look at the key preview, we can see I've added it to the inventory preview layer, and then all of the equips have been set to the player layer. So now let's take a look at the canvas and what we've got set up there. So if we look right here, we've got a skills button for skill slot 1 and skill slot 2. This will be how we address and use the skills for our skill items. And then I've created this inventory. And this is all UI. I haven't added in any of the components for this. We'll be doing the components live. This is just sort of give us a layout. Since the layout itself took a little while, I didn't want to spend an hour or so just messing with the dimensions. I wanted to be able to jump into this. We've also got the item container UI. This is going to be the first time we're going to have this UI in one of the demos. This will be for containers that are in your inventory. So I've added in a backpack as well. All right, let's go ahead and start tying things in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select our player, and in the inventory cog for under menu, I'm going to drag in this inventory item right here. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. I haven't assigned anything yet. So we need to, before we can do that, we need to make this be an inventory menu UI. It's right there. We're going to close it by key, and that's going to be the I key. So now we can drag it in. Let's drag it right here. Now we can make this a prefab if you're not going to have this directly linked to a character, if your character is dynamic or something like that. You could make this into a prefab, and we'll go ahead and do that right now. So now inventory is a prefab, and let's go ahead and we'll put a tag on the canvas. We'll call it player UI. Now we'll go back to the player, and instead of activating an object, we could spawn it in the transform or in a tag. The easiest way to set your instance up the first time is to just do it as activate game object, because otherwise, every time you make changes, you've got to stop, you've got to go into the prefab. This way you can edit it in real time, and then you can turn it into a prefab at the end if that's what you want to do. So as soon as we do that, we can see that if we pop in and press the I key, it comes up. Pressing the I key again makes it go away. So now that we've got that, let's start plugging in all of the different items. So we'll start off with, because this is going to be a categorized one, we've got a category section up in the content. And the reason for this empty bar at the top, we're going to have multiple different interfaces, and we're going to be allowing the user to select the interface from up here. That'll be in a later video. First, we're just going to do this categorized inventory. Um, so we've got this category list, and it has a horizontal layout group on there. I haven't put any spacing in. I think it's fine just the way that it is. So what I did here is I want it to have a page indicator, and I want it to have an icon, and I want it to have a name. So I put in the placeholder items for that. And let's go ahead and start looking at these page indicators. So these are I'm just using Prefab. Just a little icon for each page that we're doing. And I'm going to do page indicator UI. And this will give us, the colors to display when it's the page that we're actively on, a page that we're not on, or a page that's disabled. And that's all we need for this guy. So we're going to drag this guy in. We're going to make him a prefab. And we'll delete all the instances. Then we're going to go up to Category UI, and we're going to add in a Category UI component. And so we've got icon. We'll drag in the image. And let me expand this a little bit. And here's the category title. And we are going to use the page indicator, so this is the container that we're going to use. And here is our prefab, so we'll drag that in. Okay, now that's all done, so we're going to make category UI be a prefab. We'll delete that. And now we're going to do a category list here on the top level. It will be its own container, so we can just drag that in. And we can drag in the category UI. And we're going to show all of the categories. We're not going to have an item that says all in it that shows us everything. We're going to keep it separate. Our navigation, we're going to use the Z and C keys, and we'll allow it to auto wrap. So auto wrap means if we get to the last one and we press right, it'll go back to the first one. By default, it stops at the last one and you have to start going back left. You can do whatever works for your game. So I'm going to hide this again and jump back in. And now if we press inventory, now we can see here is all of our different categories. And we can switch with the Z and C keys. I want to be able to switch by clicking on it as well, which I can't right now. So I'm going to open up the category UI prefab. I'm going to add in an event trigger. And I'm going to add a new type of pointer click. And on that, I'm just going to invoke the category UI click. And if I look back at the category list, okay, there isn't a checkbox for allow by click, which means that's enabled always. So there we go. All right, now I can click over and we've got the categories done. Fantastic. So now let's look at this inventory grid. This is going to be controlled by the category list. But before we do that, we need to set up these items. So I've just duplicated a bunch of placeholders for now. Obviously, I've named it item UI grid because we're going to need an item UI on it. And we've got tons of options in here. So we can do selection indicators, whether it can be equipped, if it is equipped, whether it's locked, conditions, rarities, tags, counts. So rather a lot of options, and they're all optional. None of these are required. You can pick and choose whichever ones you're going to use. We're going to use the is equipped. We're going to put in this little icon here. And then we're going to do inventory icon and the selected indicator. And we're going to do the locked because we do have locking slots. So we'll put a lock icon in here as well. Okay, and I want to be able to click these as well. So same thing, we're going to go into and add an event trigger of pointer click. and it's just going to call itself item UI, click. And that's all we need for this guy, so we can make him a prefab as well. And we can delete him and all of his little clone buddies. And now we're going to add in an item grid. This isn't going to be a scrolling grid, it's going to be a paged grid, so we'll use item grid and not item scroll grid. The list source, there's a couple of different ways that this guy can get its source, either from the inventory cog, an inventory container, a merchant, or a container item. In this case, it's going to be directly from the inventory, as most things will. We're not even going to populate this guy because it'll be populated by category list, and category list is populated by the inventory menu UI, which itself is populated by inventory cog. So the item container is going to be, oh, item container UI. Never mind. Sorry, that's a different item. So the item UI prefab is going to be what we just made. We'll add in details later. We're not going to do it just yet. We'll do all available. And I'm going to show you the difference between always fill page and not in a second here. So we'll do show locked slots because I want to have that locked indicator. We will hide the selection when the input is locked, which is important if we switch over to a pop-up or anything like that. No category filtering. The list will take care of that. No additional filtering. We'll allow click by select. We'll use buttons, horizontal and vertical, to control our input. And okay, I think that's all we're going to put on this guy. So now back into the category list. We've got this list control item here, and we're going to drag in the inventory grid to the inventory client. So now when we go back in, let's just save this and disable that inventory. We'll start seeing our items. Okay, so that's the one other thing I did. I forgot to mention. I put in a bunch of starting items. These will be removed before the demo, but for purposes of setting up the UI, it's helpful to just have a bunch of items in there so that you can see that they work. Okay, so here we are in equipment, and we can see a whole bunch of stuff here, and these guys aren't where they belong. But now they are. So I think we need to go change its populate method. 6 by 5. Make sure that that goes back to manual mode. Okay, so now we're looking a bit better. That's why this wasn't being completely filled to begin with, was because the grid size was off. It was loading up the correct number according to what we told it. And let's see. Okay, the clicking works. That's good. All of our items are in the right category. All right, things are looking good. So let's pop in the item detail now. So what I did on this one is I again have a horizontal layout group on this panel. And on the left is just this image of the player. So it's always looking at you. If you equip something or unequip, it'll be reflected on your player immediately. And then I've got these detail items that's specifically for the selected item. Well, we're going to set it up so that if you select a null item or a locked slot, that'll go away, and then you'll just have your character centered. So first things first, we're going to put because this is the guy that we want to hide. I think we're going to put the detail UI onto this one. Let me see. So the item name, and here's the description. Again, just like the other one, these are all optionals. whichever ones you want. We are going to use a color rarity indicator, so we're going to need to add that here. And I'm not going to change the default colors, but you can make them whatever you like here. So we'll put in the rarity indicator and then the category icon. And we are going to use stat modifiers. We've got a placeholder here, so we'll put, here's the container. And then let's jump into this guy. So this will be, we're going to add a stat modifier UI to it. And this will take care of all of the stat modifiers that are on the selected item. So it'll be for each one of the stat modifiers that are listed, because you can hide them if you want. It'll create an instance of this prefab once it is a prefab and load it in here to display it for us. We're not using any icon or displaying the stat name or anything like that. All we're really doing is we're going to put in, here's our old value, and here's our, so old value, new value. And then we can also hide certain things if the item is equipped. And if it is equipped, we don't need the arrow and we don't need the new value, right? Because it's just going to be the value that it is. So we'll add an arrow and new value to the hide when equipped. And we can make this a prefab now. We can delete it from here. And up here we can bring in the prefab. Okay, so that's all looking pretty good. We'll go back to the item grid and tell it what our detail container is. So we'll just drag this guy right on over. Oh, did I drag the wrong item? There we go. Okay, so now if we hit play again, we should see that updating for us as we change our selection. I should have hit that first. Okay, so now we've got the left paw drawn. We can see that everything is changing. Okay. So this guy in particular, so the bracelet has a max stamina change. I think it's stamina. Oh, defense. Sorry. Max defense change and then an instant as well. We only want to show one, right? So let's go edit that guy real quick. We can go back into our DB editor, go to items, and we'll select the bracelet, hit edit. Let's see here, where's its stat? Okay, so here's its stat, which is really what we need to edit. That was my mistake. So we've got over here under the modifiers, we've got these hide and list items. So here's the sustained one. This is what we want to show. We don't want to show this other one. So just by clicking that, we'll see now that when we go back in, okay, now we're only showing one, which is what we want to do. There's this footer panel here, and under it, all of these different items. So equip, remove, open, etc. We're going to have this grid control what is shown, and then we'll populate what these items do. And in another probably about 20 minutes, we'll have a fully functional categorized item. We'll even get these two skill slots connected so that you can see that. And I've also got save and load buttons so that we can see how that works. So let's go ahead and get these context sensitive menu items plugged in. And if you're looking at these errors, this was because we didn't hide the inventory when we started the project. So when it first launched, it didn't know what the inventory cog was until we closed it and reopened it. So if we clear those and close and reopen, we can see no new errors. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add list monitor, inventory list monitor. So what this does is it fires all sorts of events based off of the list. And we've got quite a lot. It's got a positive and negative for everything. So can equip, can't equip, can remove, can't remove, etc. And we're going to be using most of these. So on can equip, we're going to show this item, and then we're going to hide it if you can't. And then same for remove, we'll use the remove item. And the reason that we're going to do this is we're going to put listeners on each of these, and they'll be trigger by key listeners. And so whenever they're visible, they'll listen for a key and try and do certain things if they are visible. Now for skill, we're actually going to show two, because we've got two skill slots, and we want to be able to assign it to either. And let's go ahead and hook most of these up before we press start again. So for all of these, we're going to do trigger by key. And let's see, so equip is the F key. Actually, you know what? It'll be faster just to show these so that I don't have to go looking for them. Okay. All right, so now let's start wiring them up. Everything is going to have an on key down as well, so we'll add that. And we're mostly, I think exclusively actually, going to be adding the inventory item grid. So let's go ahead and do that as well. Put it to all of them. So for equip, we're going to do item grid, and we're going to do equip selected. For remove, we're going to do item grid. I think it's unequip selected. Open, we're gonna skip this guy for now until we go and set up the other item. Breakdown selected. Repair selected. And these all have checks in them as well, so if you were to go ahead and call them, they would check for whether or not you could break it down before it attempted to. This one needs another window as well, so we'll take care of that later. Let's do drop selected. And then we're going to use, so we can do set selected skill, or we can do toggle selected skill. And we're going to do toggle on this. So the toggle is you press the Q key, it assigns it. If it's already assigned, it unassigns it. Then we're going to do, I think it's called skill slot 1. Actually, it might just be called skill 1. Let's go check our inventory DB, since it's been a minute since I last did this. Oh, actually, that's not even in the DB. That's on the player. Skill slots, skill 1 and skill 2. Okay. So we'll toggle skill 1. And then same thing here. Skill 2. We could leave these all enabled if we wanted to. I'm just going to disable them and have it show it to me as they come up. We're going to disable that. Let's hook up the skill slots as well. So skill slot UI on both of them. And all this is going to do is going to monitor the skill slot events and update the items accordingly. So both of them are going to need the player's inventory. And then this is going to be skill 1. This is going to be skill 2. And I'm sure you can see, so we've got skill image and then equipped image. Same for this one. Okay, now almost everything should be set up. So let's pop in. Now we can see those placeholder feather icons are gone. There's a null reference here, so we can take a look at that later if we need to. It's probably because I didn't set up, I added some items and didn't set them up. So let's see. Oh, I know what it is. I haven't given it a target list to look at. Now I have. Okay. Let's just save that and press start. All right, now we can see our items are toggling. So if I press F, the equip went away and the remove showed. I can still drop it if I want to. You can see that it'll change your selection if you've already got something equipped. We've got the open here now. We've got the modify for this because it takes an attachment. And let's look at this whole, I want to show you what that always fill page is about. So this guy does not have a max slots. He doesn't have an unlocking slots. So right now, because of the page mode that we have it set to, it's just showing you everything that is there. But in the event where you have something that has an undefined amount of slots and you always want to make sure that the page is filled, you can do always fill page. And so now we can see that these items, it just fills it with empty slots. And we can also see that that detail went away. We can see, okay, so there's no item preview yet. We need to set up the container for that. So we'll go ahead and do that real quick as well. So what it was actually looking for is this this raw image right here is where we're going to put that. So item preview UI, and then the container is going to be this preview container. So just a small setup issue there. Sorry about that. So now we'll drag this in. Okay, now that's looking the way that I had expected it to. We do still have the issue of some items aren't set. So we're going to look now into our preview container. We can see here's the clone. And all we're going to do is we're going to modify the location of this so that it's visible to the camera. Let's see, how does that look? Oh, I haven't set the layer either. That's right. I left a couple of items unset so that I could do that in this tutorial. So I believe that was the one that I left. We'll open up the preview, and I'm going to assign it to the item preview layer. Say yes to all children. Okay. Okay, so now we can move it up. Obviously, I want this to be a little bit bigger, so we can go into here and we can set the preview scale mode. Let's set it to 2 is probably good. So we'll restart this and see what the new size. And again, we still need to update the physical location of it. Okay, that's looking better. So now that I've got something I like, I'll take this existing preview and I'll just replace the prefab. And the next time we start now, it will still persist what we just did. So there, now we can see that that's exactly what we want. Okay, let's go over to the skills as well. Let's do Q. All right, we can see it's here. Q again. We'll do E. We can see it took it from its existing slot. So I think the last thing that we're going to cover in this video is we're going to get up the item container. So let's switch back to 2D, focus on this. And we're going to bring up the item container. So we're going to be introducing you to a couple of new items here. So first off, it's going to be the item container menu UI. And we're going to put the name of the item over here into container name. And then we need to set these up a lot like we did the other one. So the container item grid is we're going to do an item grid. And we're going to do this manually because it'll be set for us. We're not going to do any previews, but we will use the exact same prefab for the item UI grid. And I think this is 5 by 5. Let's drag it in here and see how much room we have. So that's definitely 5 by 2, 3. So it's 5 by 4. All right. So we'll set the grid size already set. We won't do an always fill page. We'll do all available. No category filtering. Okay. So now we can set that for the item list. And then, so another new item that we have here is the scrollable grid view, which it appears I already put this on. Let me remove it and add it back in again so that I can do that live. Okay. So this is going to be the same thing. It's going to be manually done. And what this does is it automatically sizes things for you. Instead of doing a page, it just sets this area, which was previously called, I think it was content of the viewport. It automatically sets its size to whatever you need. Again, we don't need any details. We don't need any category filtering. We're just going to use the same prefab again, so we can delete that from here. Okay, so let's close this. And then if we go to the item grid, now we have that item container UI that I was looking at earlier. Now we just plop that in there. And if we go into the footer for open, inventory item grid, open item container. Okay, so we'll go here, we'll do open. And we can see there's nothing in here. That's fine, that's how it's supposed to be. This isn't set up because we didn't drag the item in. So we'll do that real quick as well, and we'll plug in everything else. We're real close to the end of the video here, and we're close on time, so I just want to get this knocked out quickly. So inventory item container, we needed to drag in this scroll grid. So that will now get populated. And then in the footer here, we've got some context commands. And these aren't going to be like the other ones. We're going to have to do some manual trickery on here. So these are all going to be trigger by keys. Okay, that's all set up. So for store, inventory container menu UI, store selected, take, inventory menu UI, inventory item container menu UI, take selected, and then take all. And that should be everything we need. So let's get things back to their starting places and have a quick look. We'll hit save as well. All right, so we'll select here, hit you to open, and we didn't lock the input by default. And we didn't select the ability to click, and I don't think we set the keys either. So let's get back to that real quick. Inventory item grid, can click select, container, can click select. Inventory will be locked to begin with, so we'll lock that. Let's just show these guys real quick so that I can find the key. Oh, all right. Let's see, close, I believe, is X. Yep, okay. And then these are both Q. Store is F, and I think take is F. Okay, so these are both F. And I believe that makes take all be E. Yep. All right, so now we've got the items loaded. You can see we can scroll here, automatically sized for us. We can store, fantastic. And then we can, let's switch that again. Let's store some more items so that we can take one and then we can take all. All right, so there you are. That's the categorized inventory setup. We've got a couple of more different styles that we're going to do. Come join me again in part 3. Thanks.